Tea is one of the most popular drinks in the world. Every day, millions of people drink tea at home, at work, in restaurants, and during traditional ceremonies. Tea can be served hot or cold and is enjoyed in many different forms. However, tea is more than simply a drink. It has a long and fascinating history connected with ancient China, medicine, religion, international trade, colonialism, war, and cultural traditions. The history of tea began thousands of years ago in Asia and gradually spread across the world. Today, tea is an important part of daily life in many countries. The origin of tea, the history of tea began in ancient China. Tea is made mainly from the leaves of the plant Camellia sinensis. Historians believe that the tea plant originated in regions of China and nearby parts of Asia. According to a famous Chinese legend, tea was discovered around 2737 BCE by the Chinese Emperor Shennong. The legend says that Emperor Shennong was boiling water when some leaves from a nearby tea plant fell into the pot. The leaves changed the color and smell of the water. The emperor tasted the drink and found it refreshing. Although this story is a legend, archaeological and historical evidence shows that tea has been consumed in China for thousands of years. At first, tea was probably used as a medicinal plant rather than an everyday drink. Tea in ancient China. In ancient China, tea leaves were used for medicinal purposes. People believed that tea could refresh the body, improve concentration, and support digestion. Tea leaves were sometimes eaten or boiled with other ingredients. Over time, tea gradually became a popular beverage. During the Han Dynasty, tea became increasingly known in Chinese society. However, it was during the Tang Dynasty, from 618 to 907 CE, that tea became an important part of Chinese culture. Tea drinking spread among different social classes. Emperors, scholars, monks, merchants, and ordinary people began drinking tea. Tea houses also appeared in Chinese cities and became places where people could meet, talk, and relax. Lu Yu and the Classic of Tea. One of the most important people in tea history was the Chinese writer Lu Yu. Lu Yu lived during the Tang Dynasty and became famous for his knowledge of tea. Around the 8th century, he wrote a book called The Classic of Tea, or Chajing. The book described the history, cultivation, preparation, and drinking of tea. Lu Yu explained how tea plants should be grown and how tea leaves should be processed. He also discussed water quality, tea equipment, and methods of preparing tea. Because of his work, Lu Yu is sometimes called the Sage of Tea. His book helped transform tea drinking into an important cultural and artistic practice.
Tea and Buddhism. Tea also had a close connection with Buddhism. Buddhist monks often spent long periods meditating and studying religious teachings. Tea helped them remain awake and concentrated. Chinese Buddhist monasteries began cultivating and drinking tea. As Buddhism spread from China to other Asian countries, tea culture also traveled with Buddhist monks. Tea became particularly important in Japan. The relationship between tea and Buddhism later influenced the development of the famous Japanese tea ceremony. Tea spreads to Japan. Tea was introduced to Japan through contact with China. Japanese monks and travelers visited China to study Buddhism and Chinese culture. Some returned to Japan with tea seeds, and knowledge about tea preparation. Tea became increasingly popular in Japan during the 9th century. However, tea culture developed more strongly from the 12th century onward. A Japanese Buddhist monk named Eisai played an important role in promoting tea. Eisai studied Zen Buddhism in China and returned to Japan with tea seeds. He believed that tea was beneficial for health and meditation. Tea cultivation gradually expanded in Japan. The Japanese tea ceremony. Tea eventually became an important part of Japanese culture. The Japanese tea ceremony is known as chanoyu, meaning the way of tea or the practice of preparing and serving tea. The ceremony was strongly influenced by Zen Buddhist ideas. It emphasized simplicity, respect, harmony, and calmness. One of the most important figures in the development of the Japanese tea ceremony was Sen no Rikyu, who lived during the 16th century. Rikyu emphasized 4 important principles: harmony, respect, purity, tranquility. The tea ceremony became more than simply drinking tea. It became an artistic and spiritual tradition.
Tea spreads across Asia. Tea also spread to other parts of Asia. In Korea, tea became connected with Buddhist traditions and royal culture. In Tibet, tea became an important daily drink. Tibetan people developed butter tea, which is traditionally prepared with tea, butter, and salt. In Mongolia and parts of Central Asia, tea was often mixed with milk. In Southeast Asia, different tea traditions developed through trade and cultural exchange. Countries such as Vietnam, Thailand, and Myanmar developed their own methods of preparing and consuming tea. In Myanmar, tea leaves are even eaten as food in a traditional dish known as lapet, or fermented tea leaf salad. European contact with tea. European merchants and travelers first learned about tea through contact with Asia. Portuguese traders and missionaries were among the earliest Europeans to describe tea. During the 16th and 17th centuries, European maritime trade with Asia increased. The Dutch played an important role in bringing tea to Europe. In the early 17th century, tea began arriving in European ports. At first, tea was rare and extremely expensive. Because of its high price, only wealthy people could afford to drink it. Tea became a symbol of wealth and social status. Tea arrives in Britain. Tea became especially important in Britain. Tea drinking became fashionable in the 17th century. One important person in the history of British tea culture was Catherine of Braganza. She was a Portuguese princess who married King Charles II of England in 1662. Catherine enjoyed drinking tea, and tea became fashionable among members of the English royal court and wealthy society. Tea consumption gradually increased. Coffee houses and tea shops began selling tea. By the 18th century, tea had become an important part of British daily life. The British East India Company and tea trade. The British East India Company background at Britannica played a major role in the history of tea. The company was a powerful trading organization that conducted business between Britain and Asia. Britain imported enormous quantities of tea from China. Chinese tea was highly popular among British consumers. However, China mainly demanded payment in silver for its goods. This created an economic problem for Britain because large amounts of British silver were flowing into China. British merchants searched for ways to balance trade. This economic situation eventually became connected with the opium trade and growing conflict between Britain and China. Tea, opium, and the Opium Wars. Tea played an indirect but important role in the events leading to the Opium Wars. Britain had a large demand for Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain. To reduce the flow of silver to China, British merchants increased the sale of opium in China. Opium caused serious social and health problems. The Chinese government attempted to stop the opium trade. Conflict between Britain and China eventually led to the First Opium War, from 1839 to 1842. China was defeated. The conflict changed relations between China and Western powers. Although tea was not the direct cause of the war, Britain's enormous demand for Chinese tea was an important part of the economic background. Tea and the Boston Tea Party. Tea also played an important role in American history. During the 18th century, Britain imposed taxes on its American colonies. Many American colonists opposed British taxation because they had no direct representation in the British Parliament. The Tea Act of 1773 created further anger. On December 16, 1773, a group of American colonists boarded British ships in Boston Harbor. They threw large quantities of tea into the water. This event became known as the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party became an important symbol of resistance against British rule. It contributed to growing tensions that eventually led to the American Revolution. British tea production in India. Britain wanted to reduce its dependence on Chinese tea. During the 19th century, the British began developing large-scale tea production in India. Wild tea plants were identified in Assam in northeastern India. The British established tea plantations in regions such as Assam, Darjeeling, Nilgiri. Large tea estates were created. Workers were employed under extremely difficult conditions, and colonial plantation systems often involved exploitation and harsh labor practices. India eventually became one of the world's major tea-producing regions. Assam tea became known for its strong flavor. Darjeeling tea became famous for its delicate taste and aroma. Tea production involves several important stages. First, tea leaves are harvested from tea plants. The young leaves and buds are often considered valuable for producing high-quality tea. After harvesting, the leaves may undergo processes such as withering, rolling, oxidation, drying, and sorting. The exact process depends on the type of tea being produced. For example, green tea production tries to prevent significant oxidation. Black tea production allows greater oxidation. After processing, tea leaves are grated, packaged, and transported to markets. Modern tea production combines traditional knowledge with industrial technology. Tea culture around the world. Different countries have developed unique tea traditions. In China, tea is closely connected with hospitality, history, and traditional culture. In Japan, the tea ceremony emphasizes harmony and simplicity. In Britain, tea is associated with afternoon tea and everyday social life. In India, chai is extremely popular. Indian chai is often prepared with black tea, milk, sugar, and spices. In Morocco, green tea with mint is an important symbol of hospitality. In Turkey, strong black tea is commonly served in small glasses. In Russia, tea has traditionally been connected with the samovar. In Tibet, Butter tea provides warmth and energy in a cold environment. In Southeast Asia, iced tea, milk tea, and sweet tea drinks have become very popular. These traditions show how one plant can become part of many different cultures. Tea in the modern world today, tea is one of the world's most widely consumed beverages. Major tea-producing countries include China, India, Kenya, Sri Lanka, and several other nations. Tea is sold in many forms, including loose-leaf tea, tea bags, bottled tea, instant tea, and ready-to-drink products. Modern tea shops also sell bubble tea, fruit tea, milk tea, and other creative drinks. Bubble tea, which developed in Taiwan during the 20th century, has become internationally popular. The global tea industry supports millions of farmers, plantation workers, factory employees, traders, and businesses. Tea and health. Tea contains natural chemical compounds, including caffeine and polyphenols. Many people drink tea because they find it refreshing and relaxing. Scientific researchers have studied tea and its possible effects on human health. However, the effects can depend on the type of tea, the amount consumed, and the ingredients added to it. For example, tea drinks containing large amounts of sugar may have different nutritional effects from unsweetened tea. Tea should therefore be understood as both a traditional beverage and a subject of modern scientific research. The historical importance of tea has had a remarkable influence on world history. It helped develop trade between Asia and Europe. It influenced British culture and colonial expansion. Tea was connected with the economic background of the Opium Wars. The Boston Tea Party made tea part of the history of the American Revolution. Tea plantations also transformed agriculture and labor systems in India, Sri Lanka, and other regions. At the same time, tea created important cultural traditions in China, Japan, Britain, India, and many other societies. Tea is therefore more than a beverage. It is connected with politics, economics, religion, colonialism, culture, and international relations. The history of tea began thousands of years ago in ancient China. Tea was first valued for medicinal purposes before becoming a popular daily drink. During the Tang Dynasty, tea became an important part of Chinese culture. Buddhist monks helped spread tea traditions to Japan and other parts of Asia. European merchants later introduced tea to Europe. Britain developed a powerful tea culture, and the demand for tea influenced international trade, colonial expansion, and political conflicts. Tea plantations expanded in India and Sri Lanka, while different countries created their own unique tea traditions. Today, tea is enjoyed by people around the world. From Chinese tea houses and Japanese tea ceremonies to British afternoon tea, Indian chai, and modern bubble tea, the history of tea demonstrates how a simple leaf became one of the most influential beverages in human history.